Thank you so much. Welcome, Jim. Please take it away.
All right. Thank you, Dominica. And as Dominica said, good morning to you all. And happy October. So we're vastly into fall now. So before I start the presentation, I just wanted to give a little bit of a frame of reference on the presentation. I'll try to tackle two things. One, to explain what the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation is and the services we provide, but I also want to provide a frame of reference in regards to students that are maybe transitioning from high school to post-secondary ed or vocational schools, and things related to that. So I'm trying to capture two different audiences here, and also just so people have kind of a global perspective of what vocational rehabilitation is, because on the outside it can be difficult to kind of know what we are, what we do. Our name is even hard to say, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. That is even hard to say. So throughout the presentation, if you hear me say DVR, I'm just shortening the name. But I'll try to say vocational rehabilitation from time to time, just so if people are joining late and things of that nature. Dominica, if you could, if I miss any questions in the chat box, just let me know. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat box, but sometimes when you're sharing the screen, it's hard to see that. So
Sounds good. I will.
And just so everybody knows, you're more than welcome to ask questions at any time, and I'll try to keep my eye out for the chat box. So I'm going to share my screen. Hope everyone can see that.
Yes, not in the presentation mode just yet.
Okay, so let me get in presentation mode. Is it in presentation mode now for everybody?
Yes,
okay,
thank
great.
you.
So Alaska Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. So as I said, I'll be saying DVR throughout the presentation, so I don't have to say that long word. We prepare students and adults with disabilities to get good jobs. So we are part of the Department of Labor. So we're considered an employment agency, but unlike if you're walking to a job center, which we are part of, we are working solely with individuals with disabilities and in addressing how those disabilities impact the world of work. So this is where I'm going to talk. I'm going to start off talking a little bit about the transition from school to the world of work, and what are some of the services that we provide. So in our regulations, federal regulation, we have no real age of how old or how young you can be to be a client of vocational rehabilitation. However, since though we are an employment agency, we are focusing on work, and typically we'll start working with kids when they're around their junior year of high school or senior year, when they're really starting to think about what they're doing after they transition out of high school. Yes, there are some students that are staying in high school longer, and we might capture them when they're probably about a year away from transitioning out of their, as they would call, super senior coursework. So some of the big things that we do in helping that transition is we start doing some exploration. And schools already do a pretty good job of having kids do some, using ACCIS or some other career interest inventories, in helping kids start thinking about what they would like to do after high school. But we also have a very extensive evaluation centers throughout the state that can have a lot of aptitude, achievement, interest testing that are more geared toward the world of work. And it can be an enhancement of some of the services or some of the assessment kids have gotten at school. or if they've been homeschooled as well. And I should back up for a second here and also give another global perspective. So I know I'm speaking with folks from around the state, and we are a state agency that have regional areas. Just like me, I'm a Southeast Regional Manager. We have 2 regions in Anchorage. We have a region in Northern Fairbanks. And then we also have a region that does the maps to Kenai Valley. And so we have an obligation to serve any client that applies for services. And it doesn't matter where they live in the state. So we are a statewide program. So everything I'm talking about here is true for any voc rehab office that we have in the state. So back to where I was at, I wanted to make sure I got that out to you guys. So I apologize for kind of doing a veer right there. So we do a lot of assessment testing, and just to get kids to start thinking about what they might want to do after school. You know, they've heard a lot of things in school from teachers, from their fellow students, friends, family, and using all of that in helping them start looking at what they have their interest area. And we totally understand. The majority of us went into college or vocational programs or whatever it might be with one idea of a career, and we left with a totally different idea. Or we did a couple of jobs before we really kind of fell into the career. We totally understand that. They're just trying to get them a map to start on that trajectory, get them start thinking about those things. Because a lot of times kids with disabilities haven't really been given the opportunity to do that in a way they understand, in a way they can be explained to, because our assessments are the evaluators we have understand how to do assessments for individuals with disabilities. And so this is providing them an opportunity to kind of be free in a sense of doing that exploration. So how do you know DVR is the right place? A lot of times when I do these kind of presentations, I tell people, we do have an eligibility process. And some of the key things in our eligibility is, does an individual have a disability? The second piece is, does their disability create an impediment to employment? And then the third one, do they need VR services? It sounds simple, but it's really complex. And I often tell people, you know, don't worry about if you're referring a student, a friend, coworker, anybody to vocational rehabilitation. I don't want you to worry about, oh, I don't know if they'll be eligible or not. That's our job. We need to figure that out. But the thing I like to people to know is, you know, we are a program that help people with disabilities. So that's one of the key components on doing a referral who has known that they have a disability. And if you don't really know for sure, it's still safe to do the referral. But some of the examples of disabilities that we work with, and these are small examples, it's exhaustive. But it can be learning disabilities, depression and anxiety, autism, ADD or ADHD, you know, attention deficits, diabetes, hearing loss, speech impediments, substance use disorders, which often schools and things like that don't think about referring those students to our program, thinking that, you know, the school counselors are addressing those issues and things like that, which they do a great job at. But you also got to think about what supports are going to be there for that kid when they transition out of school. How are they going to get connected with those support systems? And that's where we can help with some of that. So what can you expect? So we have throughout the state vocational rehabilitation counselors. They are The majority of them are certified rehab counselors. That means they've gone through master's degree programs in working with people with disabilities and employment. And so one of the most important services that we provide is guidance and counseling. We do have a lot of paid services that we provide, but I always feel that guidance and counseling is one of the most important services that we provide, and it's free. You know, helping identify some of those interests and skills assessments. You know, getting them working toward developing a career path, a plan. Participate in workshops and work experiences. The work experiences, I will say, is probably the #1 service that kids will say that they enjoyed the most, and it's paid. It's paid at the state minimum wage amount of $10.85, which for some that they would like it higher because they can see that McDonald's is McDonald's will pay $15 to $20 an hour. But this is just a work experience, and we talk to them about that. This isn't a job. This is just trying things out to see if you have interest in that type of career. Because a lot of times people will have this frame of reference of what they think that job is about, and then they go try it out and they realize, oh, I don't really like that. Or they'll say, I love it. This is what I want to do. And then planning for college or vocational school, or one of the other prime training that we provide is on-the-job training. You know, working with an employer and developing an on-the-job training contract where that person becomes an employee of that employer. So there's a lot of training can mean a lot of different things within our program. You know, just like anything else, it's important for the students, the clients, to be active, staying in contact with us. We can't help them without knowing what their needs are and how we can better assist them. So being active in services is really important. I'm just going to take a quick look at the chat, see if there's any questions. Okay, so Catherine asked a question of, if it is determined that someone is not eligible for DVR services, there are built-in process to get yet another resource so they can still get the support. Yes, we don't just say, sorry, you're not eligible, have a good day. We talk to them about what other resources are out there that can help them out. We just don't send a letter and say, you know, like I said, have a good day. No, if we're not going to make somebody eligible, we're going to have a sit down with that person, explain to them why, and then explain to them what are some of the other resources out there that can help them out. What is the oldest they can be for you to help them? The oldest I've seen so far is 91. And I'll tell you, from when I first started working in vocational rehabilitation, which was many years ago, the oldest that I would see on our caseloads would be anywhere from 50 to 55. Typically, they were 40 and younger. That is not the case anymore. I see many cases that are individuals that are 60, 65, 70. It's just because of the change in the workforce. More people are working much later in life, either because socialization, they just want to be around others, or their retirement is not paying all what they need to pay because of just the cost of living. All right, so let me get back to what is the youngest I've seen is 16. Typically we don't go much younger than that. We can provide services to younger kids in another process called pre-employment transition services. They are not officially a client of vocational rehabilitation, but we have an avenue of providing 5 core required services that can be done for those kids. And those are usually done through like a group format where we're getting referrals from teachers. Teachers are kind of aware of it and things of that nature. What are some organizations that DVR partners with to offer work experience? Tribal Vocational Rehabilitation. They're basically a mirror image of us, but they only work with Alaskan Natives or American Natives that are enrolled in a registered tribe. They basically have to have a blood card, but we do partner with them. They do provide some work experiences. We partner with our DOL partners, the Division of Employment and Training Services. They do some work experiences. I'm trying to think of any other key ones. Those are probably the two primary ones that we partner with that can provide those services. So I'm going to jump back into my presentation and I'll check the chat box again in a little bit. All right. Why is my screen not? Let me see something here. My presentation froze. Let me see here. Oh, here we go. All right. So learn how to get started. I had put on here links and I'll provide this presentation to Dominica so individuals can click onto these links. We have on our DVR webpage, we have where you can do a self-referral. It used to be a little bit different process, but we turned it into a self-referral. And so individuals, if you're a student or if you're a family member and you're helping a friend, apply for VR services. You can go to our webpage, click on, it'll be at the top in red. Want to refer yourself to VR, you can click on there, you send it in, and then it goes to this main office place that looks at those, and then they distribute them out to the appropriate VR office. And then we contact you to get the process started. We also have a DVR orientation video on there. We also have a transition video. If you'll notice on the listing of options, they'll say you want to learn more about transition services. Click on there. There's a lot of information about transition services. But they also have a video, short 5-minute video that I think, personally, I think is one of the best transition videos I've seen because it's short, but gets to the point. Kids understand it. It's a great video. You can watch it. And it kind of gives you a perspective, somebody that going into applying for services. There's also our flyers and a lot more information than just what I put links here for, but it gets you a starting point. Okay. Oops. All right, sorry about that. My PowerPoint is not moving as the way it should be. So after you've seen the orientation video or you've spoken with one of us at the DVR office, one of the first things that we do is have you meet with a counselor. Sit down and just have a conversation. We call it an intake, but really it's just a conversation. Sitting down where the counselor is asking a lot of questions to you about you, your background, your educational adventure, if you're older, your work history, just getting a global perspective. Of course, when we're sitting down with a high school kid, that conversation is going to be a lot of, I don't know, maybe, yes or no. It's a little bit harder, and you have to kind of really work with the kid to pull out some of the key pieces of information. A lot of times we'll ask that a teacher be in that meeting, or a parent, guardian, somebody that can help fill in the gaps where that student might not be able to articulate some of that information. So back to a little bit about the eligibility. As I said earlier, we do have an eligibility process. And so these are some of the three key components that I kind of talked about earlier, but I'm going off a little bit more. Must have a disability that makes it difficult for them to prepare, maintain employment. And then a certified rehab counselor will look at the individual work history, medical records, school records, or any other pertinent information to make that eligibility determination. And they have to do that within 60 days of application. It can be extended longer, but it has to be for reasons out of our control. Some of the main reasons is either it's hard to get records. A lot of times if people move up from the lower 48, we're getting records from the down south, takes a while. Or they've never had any documentation of their disability. And we might set up some assessments to get some of that documentation. So those are some of the reasons why it could be extended beyond 60 days. A lot of times it's done much sooner than that. You know, the average, I think, for our region is around 35 to 40 days. That's just the average. Sometimes it can be done within a week or two. It's just a matter of the timelines of getting all that information. So you've been made eligible. What now? So we have a plan, an individualized plan for employment called IPE. It's much like what the schools have, which is an IEP, individualized education plan. They're kind of similar. But the difference is that we're looking at employment and employment goals. And so we're working with that student or client, an adult, on what are some of the services that are needed to help them reach that employment goal. So that plan will have a specific employment goal. It can be a broad name of a goal because they might have an interest in certain type of career clusters that could have a lot of different types of specific job titles in that. So we might have a broad goal because the person kind of has an interest in that area, but they're not really sure specifically what type of specific job that might be. We have timelines that are listed on that plan. And then we have all the different services that are needed to help that person reach that plan or that goal. And also who pays for those services. Majority of services are going to be paid from DVR, but some might be paid through if they have medical insurance or things like that. Or if there are other programs that are involved, such as I mentioned earlier, Tribal Vocational Rehabilitation, or the Division of Employment and Training Services. So there might be other people that are supporting this person, and we might include those support services in what they're paying. And from the time of eligibility to developing that plan should be done within 90 days. I would say plan development takes a little bit longer because there's a lot that might go into figuring out what are all the services that are needed. I talked about earlier on the work experiences. That might be part of that plan development process. Or they might have other assessments that are needed to help them figure out what services are needed. And that takes time. And I try to explain to people that vocational rehabilitation takes time. It's not an overnight process. And the reason being is that it takes time sometimes to figure out all what is needed to help that person be successful. They might have struggled in school for a long time because of their disability. And there might be a lot of things that need to be figured out how all that is going to transition to the world of work. And so that takes time. What's on the DVR menu? So I spoke about some of the services that we provide, but there's other ones. Assessing strengths, so that's using some of our vocational interests and assessments, as well as work experiences. That's done through our Career Development Center. I also called it Vocational Evaluation Center. That's where we're doing a lot of exploration, doing interest assessment, aptitude, achievement testing. trying to figure out, kind of narrowing toward that employment goal. Guidance and counseling. That's where the counselor is helping guide you through this process of rehabilitation and counseling you along the way. Doing that rehabilitation counseling, talking about your disability, talking about how some of those challenges are. And then I'll tell you, with young adults, that's often a hard conversation because they don't want to hear the word disability. And sometimes we'll have to, change the way we say things. We don't necessarily say, what is your disability is making it difficult because it's blah, 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 blah. We might have to change in the wording that we're doing. Some young adults are very good at articulating what their challenges are. Others may not completely understand. And that's where we have to be flexible in the way we're communicating with these individuals. Assistive technology. And I apologize, it might having some technical challenges, but I'm working through it. So assistive technology. Interesting on this topic. This is where individuals may benefit from various, and I'll say AT devices as an example, where there might be software like Read and Write Gold, Drag and Dictate, for individual learning disabilities that can be very beneficial. There might be various types of apps that are on phones, on our smartphones, that can be helpful for individuals with disabilities, especially maybe somebody that has a hard time with speech, articulating their words and things of that nature. Those are very helpful for those individuals. And there are so much out there in regards to assistive technology. We often hire ATLA, which is out of Anchorage, the assistive technology. Used to be called Libraries of Alaska. They don't really have a library, where they'll do an assessment. And in that assessment, they'll give us some recommendations of what assistive technology might be helpful for that individual. Because there's so much out there, we're not the experts in that area. Ability training. Ability training is where we're doing various training, either in, I'll use an example of an individual that's blind or visually impaired. We have up in Anchorage, the Alaska Center for the Blind. They do a lot of orientation and mobility training. So if we're working with an individual that needs help with that orientation and mobility, we'll send them up there for some training. Or an example of somebody that may have some cognitive challenges, either through traumatic brain injury or let's say FASD, and they're having some difficulty in maybe riding the bus transportation to be able to go to work. We might help them with getting the ability to ride the bus. So there's a lot of different things out there in helping that individual gain some abilities around their disabilities. And as I mentioned earlier, collaboration with our partners. Many individuals we're working with have a lot of different people that are already helping them, and we collaborate with them. Because I always feel the more the merrier, because a lot of individuals have very complex lives, and it's hard just for one person, one VR counselor, to be able to solve all the issues that person may have. So the more we're collaborating with others, the more chances for success and hitting that target of the world of work, getting a job. It's all about employment. So I talked a little bit about this already, but I think reiterating things is a good thing. And before I do that, let me check the chat box. Great, thanks for inputting that information in the chat box, Dominica. Appreciate it. The employment goal on that plan, list of services, cost of services, who will pay for the services, dates of services, and who provides them, and your rights and responsibilities. We want folks to know what we talk about rights and responsibility at the beginning of the process, but also in the middle. So, because a lot of times in that, when you're applying for services for anything, when we go to doctor's offices, we're filling out all the forms and all that kind of stuff, or any avenue that they throw a lot of stuff at us in the beginning, and we often forget a lot of that. So we bring up some of this information again later on. Just as a reminder, what your rights and responsibilities are, because it's kind of a two-way street. We're working together as a pathway. What is work? I mentioned the word employment and work. So what does that really mean? Because work can mean a lot of different things, and even in different cultures. It can be part-time or full-time. There are some employment agencies out there that their goal and their rules and regulations is full-time work. Well, we work with individuals with disabilities, and we understand that in some individuals with their disability, because of their disability, they're not going to be able to do full-time work, and part-time might be the best option. Our goal is to help somebody when it comes to part-time is 20 hours a week, but it doesn't always have to be that, because we understand individuals have different work tolerances. But it can be part-time or full-time, but it has to be within the community, and we call that competitive integrated employment. So out there working among others that have or do not have disabilities. Has to be paid, has to be at least minimum wage. But as we all know, a lot of jobs out there are probably paying much higher than minimum wage, but it does have to be paid employment, because that is part of our rules and regulations. It can be self-employment. Statistics have shown that many individuals with disabilities can be very successful in self-employment. Now, self-employment definitely has a much higher, as we all know, I think it's around 50% of all self-employments succeed. So there's a lot of risks involved with having a self-employment. So it's going to be a much slower process that we're going to be going through and helping with somebody with self-employment, because there's so much that's involved there. Business plan development. There's just a lot of planning that comes with self-employment. Even it can be just kind of small, simple self-employment, but there's still a lot of planning that comes in with that, on top of addressing the disability needs that person may have. It can be supported employment. Supported employment often means where individuals who, prime example of individuals that are receiving Medicaid waiver services. They might have been identified with individuals with developmental disability, where with that waiver, they're getting some on-the-job supports. Many of us may have heard it as job coaching, where they're having that on-the-job support while working. Some individuals may need 100% on-the-job supports. Others may need maybe 20%, but they will need it for an extended period of time, and that's called supported employment. And we're not long-term supports. That's where we transition after the person's been working for an X amount of time. And I say X because this is all individualized. One person may need more time with our supports than others. But we are considered time-limited services. Now, when I say that, doesn't mean if you apply for services today, you have to have a job by next year, this date. No, that's not what it means. It just means there is a closure to our process. But with supported employment, then we're transitioning that individual for the long-term support under their waiver. That's why it's called supported employment. I got a job now, what? Discussion about what support services are needed to maintain that job. So a lot of times we'll do job placement, help that person get the job. And then once they get the job, then a discussion about what support services they may need on that job. And then provide documentation of employment with pay stubs. I will have to say that one of the most challenging things that happens is getting copies of the pay stubs. Because a lot of times individuals get a job, it's going well. In their mind, they're done with DVR. DVR, I don't need them anymore. And so following up with them and getting that information is sometimes very difficult. But it is documentation that our federal oversight want to see, so they know that people are actually getting jobs and being taxpayers and things of that nature. It's a little more challenging in regards to self-employment, but there are ways that we can get that documentation in self-employment as well. And then once they're successfully working for at least 90 days, we can successfully close their case. And I will say though, you know, a lot of times people think, well, my case has been closed, I can't come back to VR. That's not true. Individuals, situations change, their disabilities changes. And there might be, maybe they lost that job that we successfully closed them in. And one of the big reasons that I've seen over the years is change in supervisor. A supervisor doesn't understand the individual's disabilities, doesn't understand the accommodations they got, and it just becomes very challenging. Or like I mentioned, their disability changes where it makes it difficult for them to do that type of job, and they need to look at other types of work. And they can come back in and we'll, you know, go through the same process of eligibility planning, because it's all a new situation. I mentioned this before. There's also tribal vocational rehabilitation. There are, I want to say 12 programs now in the state, all around the state. And I have included a link with this PowerPoint that, like I said, I'll be providing to Dominica, that she can forward out to you guys. And if you go on that link, you can find the Tribal Vocational Rehabilitation Center near you. As I mentioned, you have to be enrolled in a recognized tribe, either in Alaska or in the lower 48, and have a blood form for, well, if you're in a registered tribe, you already have your blood form, but they can help provide the tribal VR with what we say the difference is they are providing some culturally relevant services. A lot of services they provide are similar to ours, but with the cultural aspect, it's kind of enhancing each other's services. This is the link to our DVR webpage that I had mentioned earlier. Also on that link, you can find a DVR office that's close to you, because we do have offices throughout the state. We probably the most rural office we have would be our, and it's not really rural, would be our Sitka office. But we have offices in Kenai, we have offices in Eagle River, we have the 2 regions that are in Anchorage, Fairbanks, and then here southeast, we've got Juneau, Sitka, and Ketchikan. So we're spread out. And then we have counselors that serve all areas of the state. My contact info, you're more than welcome to email me. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me, because I'm often on the road to either Sitka or Ketchikan, or just earlier this week I was up in Anchorage, and I'm always checking my emails, but I included my phone number as well if you prefer to speak over the phone, which I totally understand. And I'm going to check the chat box, make sure. Oh, can a legal guardian fill out the self-referral for a person? Oh, most definitely. And when that's a really good question, and thank you, Tina, for asking that question. When we have somebody that's a legal guardian, we do ask for a copy of, well, it's different if they're under 18. We totally understand that. We have parent signature or legal guardian signature on that. If they're over 18, we will want the court documents to show that that person has been court appointed as legal guardianship, and we include that in with the case file so we have record of that. You know, we often have young adults that, let's say they're 20 years old, and a parent calls in and they're like, I want to know how Susie's case is going with VR. And if we don't have any paperwork that shows that they're a legal guardian, we're going to be like, I'm sorry, we don't have a release to talk with you. And because that person's an adult, and we're going to respect their privacy and confidentiality as being an adult. So that's why it's really important if parents or legal guardians of somebody over 18 that we get that paperwork so we can freely talk with them. But if they don't, then we have to have releases for the parents or aunties and uncles or whoever is important in that person's life. So good question. Oh, even sometimes we'll have individuals that have conservators, or they have a representative from the Office of Public Advocacy. And we also make sure to get that documentation from them as well. So good question. Any other questions? I think I probably went past my timeline, so I apologize, Dominica.
It's all good, Jim. Thank you.
If there's no other questions, I thank you all once again for your time and all the good questions that you asked. And I'll make sure you get the PowerPoint.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jim, for joining us this morning and sharing all this information. Very, very valuable. So I thank you for joining us again this year.
No problem. I'm happy to do it, Dominica, and continue to support it as long as you need me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right, you
Have a
take
great
care.
day. Bye-bye.
Bye.